program coordinator at PMC. I want to thank everybody for coming. We're being hosted by Philadelphia Free Library, and today your presenters are going to be Debbie Gross and the Honorable Judge Glazer. And I'm just going to go into a little bit more about his background. Judge Glazer was elected for the Court of the Common Pleas in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in November 1991. He has served as a trial judge in the criminal and civil divisions, hearing a wide variety of matters in both jury and non-jury settings. He has presided over capital and non-capital homicides, serious criminal offenses, medical, legal, malpractice cases, class actions, administrative appeals, real estate cases, tax cases, and general civil litigation. Judge Glazer also was a supervising judge in the Commerce Court of Common Pleas, overseeing complex commercial litigation. In December 2011, he was appointed by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court as the administrative judge of the Philadelphia Traffic Court. He was placed in charge of a multi-year effort to reform a court which was beset by an institutional corruption on a massive scale, which was ultimately reorganized into an efficient, modern, and honest institution, now known as the Traffic Division of the Philadelphia Municipal Court. Prior to the bench, Judge Glazer served as an assistant United States attorney in Philadelphia for over 10 years. He served as a chief of the fraud section, which he supervised and prosecuted complex fraud and judicial corruption matters. So as we start to begin, if you do have any technical issues, please email us at staff@pmconline.org, or if you lose connection, the Zoom link that you received has a telephone number which you can call in. Also, tonight's presenters are discussing general legal topics. They are not giving legal advice. Should you wish to seek legal advice, consult an attorney of your choice. Also, this program will be recorded, and the recording will be available at www.pmconline.org, and you can click resources. Also, we are being sponsored by Comcast, NBC Universal for our 2022 PMC shares for court basic workshops across Pennsylvania. A little bit of information about what PMC is. PMC is a state nonprofit, nonpartisan organization who is dedicated to ensuring all Pennsylvanians come to our courts with confidence and that they will be heard by qualified, fair, and impartial judges. We are also advocating for judicial reform, educate Pennsylvanians on the courts and how to navigate them, and about the judiciary, and we hold appellate court forums. A little bit of the work that we do is PMC shares, which you're at right now for workshops that we do. Also, we have a PMC listen hotline, which you can ask questions and call in. Also, we have PMC watches, which I'm in charge of doing the bail hearings and taking volunteers to observe preliminary hearings.
And early bail review hearings.
And early bail review hearings, which we've just added on. And a little bit of the workshops that we have had for January and February is family court, navigating and understanding PA court systems, landlord tenant. We do have your rights in civil court matters and criminal court. If you are interested in going to our workshops, you can go on our website at www.pmconline.org, and there will be recordings of this workshop on there as well.
Okay. Thank you, Anaya, very much. So hi, I'm Debbie Gross. I'm the CEO of Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We will keep an eye out for them. Also, we will make this slide deck available to you by PDF afterwards. And finally, the last administrative thing. There is a QR code on the last slide when we get to it, and we would love you to fill it out. So why are we here tonight? We are going to cover 3 topics. One is going to be our Pennsylvania court system. Why do you need to know about it? How does it impact you? And 2023 is an election year. So in Pennsylvania, we elect our judges in odd numbered years. So again, we'll explain to you what you need to do to educate yourself about judicial elections. And then finally, we're going to touch upon your role in the court system, because you are a crucial component of a very important independent judiciary in Pennsylvania. So first, the structure of our court system. First, you should know that we in Pennsylvania have the oldest constitution, older than the U.S. Constitution. Pennsylvania has its own separate state constitution, and our court system is one of the oldest established court systems as well. It was a little different then. We didn't have, as you'll see, the various appellate courts, but we had one of the first court systems in the United States. So first, why do you need to go to court? There's usually 2 kinds of cases. One is known as a civil suit, and the other is known as a criminal suit. So civil is a matter between 2 private parties, I will say, to 2 businesses, it's between 2 litigants. There's usually, one is called the person who files the case is called the plaintiff. Who the case is against is called the defendant. There's a different standard of proof. There's for a civil suit, there's a different number of jurors sometimes, depending on where you're at. And you don't have an automatic right to an attorney. We have an asterisk here because in guardianship matters, there may be a right to attorney. In Philadelphia, in landlord-tenant matters, there is a right to an attorney for a day. So civil suits different from a criminal suit, which is usually a situation where the state, the local government, or a city is bringing a case against an individual because of violation of the laws. And the determination is to determine whether the defendant broke the law. And again, it's a different standard of proof. The prosecutor must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and there is a right to an attorney. Your Honor, do you want to have any general comments on the differences between civil and criminal, since you've been in both courts?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that the prosecutor is not the lawyer for the victim. The prosecutor represents the state, the Commonwealth, the federal government, and the victim is the means by which the case is brought into court. But oftentimes you will hear prosecutors say, well, I'm here to represent the victims. That's not quite correct. I mean, they're there to represent the interest of the victim of the case, but they are not the lawyer for the victim. In terms of the civil suits, it can be between 2 private parties, between a business, can be between a private party and the government entity. People sue SEPTA all the time. It's a different dynamic in the case. You're seeking different things. In a civil suit, you're generally seeking money damages, where in a criminal case, you're seeking could be incarceration, maybe not incarceration, but they're just very different types of cases.
Thank you. So there we go. In Pennsylvania, we have what's known as, I'll say, a triangular structure for our court system. Our highest court is our Supreme Court. It takes appeals from the level below it, which is known as our intermediate appellate court, comprised of our superior and Commonwealth courts. They typically, I will say, and we're going to go into more detail, but typically take appeals from the Court of Common Pleas. Similarly, the Supreme Court does have original jurisdiction over a limited amount of cases, but we will discuss that. The Court of Common Pleas can be known as an entry-level court, meaning that's the first court experience somebody would have, or it could take an appeal from the municipal courts. Now in Philadelphia, our entry level court, which we'll discuss, is our municipal court, but outside of Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania's other counties, our entry level courts are the magisterial district courts. So a little bit about our that entry, I'm going to say the entry level court in Philadelphia. It's known as our municipal court. And actually, I should take a step back. Philadelphia is known as the first judicial district. So sometimes you'll hear that term. Other counties, have different judicial district numbers, I will say. For example, Allegheny County in Pittsburgh is known as the fifth judicial district. But again, here in Philadelphia, in the first judicial district, that entry level court is a municipal court. It is headed by a president judge. His name is Patrick Dugan. And this court is divided into a few different divisions. Your Honor, do you want to discuss this?
Well, I think it's pretty clear. There's a civil division, a criminal division. The civil division does a lot of landlord-tenant matters. It's also known as the small claims court that hear cases below a certain dollar amount. The criminal division can hear misdemeanor and summary criminal trials. Those are all subject to appeal to the Common Pleas Court. And they also have a very important function of hearing preliminary hearings, which determine whether cases actually proceed to court. It's a very busy court. It truly is the people's court. I think there's no question about that. The last area there is kind of something that's near and dear to my heart, which is the traffic division. I could probably spend the whole hour talking about that. I won't, but it was a horribly corrupt system where people would have moving traffic violations heard. And if you had connections, you could get the case fixed, basically. It became a terrible problem, particularly for people who didn't have connections, because there were two tracks of justice. You were either connected or not connected. And that is not a court system. I'm not sure what that is, but it's not a court system. It's not fair for people. So with the help of many, many people, including, I might say, Pennsylvania for the Modern Courts, Lynn Marks, I guess Ms. Gross' predecessor, was incredibly helpful in helping me get ethical changes, legislative changes, and ultimately the Constitution of Pennsylvania was amended to remove the court so that the structure of the court now is quite different. I believe that it's extremely fair for people there. It's not popular getting speeding tickets. That's not, one of the nicer things that happen in life. But I think that when it does happen, you can be confident that you will be treated fairly, decently, and get a fair result.
And I think it's important that that you don't need a lawyer, right? I mean, sometimes people
Correct.
feel like, okay, when they go into court, I need to hire a lawyer. Not most, but a lot of cases in municipal court in particular, people represent themselves and the judges know that. And the judges understand that, sometimes it's expensive to get a lawyer. As long as you are not screaming at the judge, present your case in a calm manner, respectable manner, you will be given the due process that you deserve. And it's important to make sure that you present your case, right? So, we have many different programs I will tell you about matters that go in front of judges in municipal court or magisterial district courts. But the one thing that I am a broken record about is that, if you're bringing a case, make sure you bring your documents. Make sure you support your arguments in any of these, in any court here. If you have evidence, bring it with you. Do not say I left it at home. because that's not the answer, right? The answer is, I have the document, I have the email, I have the text, I have the picture, but make sure you bring it with you so that the judge can make an informed decision.
On the other hand, that is correct, but there are some cases where you do need legal assistance.
Yes.
Where
Oh,
you-
100%. I'm not. Yes. Yes.
where you don't want to get hurt or hurt yourself. And
Oops. Wait, I gotta go back. Sorry about this.
it's a
quickly.
complicated situation, but because judges can't give you legal advice.
Right.
And the other side, if you're a plaintiff or defendant, their lawyer is not going to give you legal advice. So I guess the bottom line is it depends on the case, depends on the situation.
And in that matter, there are Philadelphia is very special, I say, in that it has over 40 different legal nonprofits that can assist you. The Philadelphia Bar Association is an amazing reference. You can go on the Bar Association's website to find out about the different legal nonprofits in Philadelphia. So it is important for you to know that you are not alone, and that there is help out there.
Correct.
Okay. So that's our entry level court, right? And so that entry level court typically handles disputes. I should go back again. Sorry about that. Typically handles disputes that are about $12,000 or less. I would like to say that not all, if you decide that you are not happy with that decision, you are entitled to appeal it. And the court that you appeal it to, the decision by the judge, the court that you appeal it to is known as the Court of Common Pleas, and it's a de novo start, right? It means that your case starts, I'll say, anew. And the Court of Common Pleas is itself divided into various divisions. Your Honor, do you want to go into this a little bit?
Sure. The Common Pleas is divided into the trial division, which includes civil courts and criminal courts. Part of the trial division also is the commerce program, which I was a part of for about 10 years. Each division has a supervising judge, and the administrative judge of the trial division is Judge Lizette Sheridan-Harris, and she oversees the entire trial division, which is probably the biggest division of the Common Pleas Court. The family division is family court, and that is in its own building and has several divisions and multiple judges. And it's juvenile court and domestic relations. And the administrative judge there is Judge Margaret Murphy. The orphans division is kind of an archaic name. Other courts in New York, it's called the surrogates court. Other courts call it the probate division. It's where estates are handled. People who are deemed to need guardians would go through the orphans court. The orphans court also deals with litigation involving charitable organizations. It's a small court, much smaller than the other two divisions, but that in no way means that it's unimportant. It deals with many people who cannot take care of themselves. And it is a very important court. The Honorable Sheila Wood Skipper is the administrative judge of that court. Each court is very specialized, and each court deals with areas that they really become very expert in. Whether it's just routine civil litigation or commercial litigation, family court or orphans division. And most of the judges, I would say, are in these divisions because they have an interest in the area. So that I think that it's quite specialized with individual expertise, and they get a lot of work, all of them.
And Philadelphia happens to be, I would say, one of the busiest counties in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania with respect to case filings, and it has the largest number of judges in Philadelphia County as opposed to all the other counties in the state.
Right.
And this is just an example so that you can see the complexity, I will say, of our civil side of the civil division in the trial division in the Court of Common Pleas. And we have, Your Honor, I don't know what the current number is. Do you know how many judges are on the civil
I
side?
don't know the exact number.
Yeah.
I would be guessing.
Okay.
Something like 35 or 40, something like that.
Right. And, the other thing that's important is the court is so busy that they actually also rely on senior judges, which Judge Glazer is one, to provide expertise and experience and to help work through the backlog. So then this is the chart. So you have another example of the criminal side of the Court of Common Pleas. And again, a lot of different programs and different judges handling different programs. But this setup is for efficiency, for expertise, and for trying to move things along. Any other comments, Your Honor?
No.
Okay.
No.
Great. So you'll hear again, but I'm just putting this in so that you can remember, there are judges there are spots open for judges in the Courts of Common Pleas, and we'll tell you a little bit about that, down the road. So a decision is made by the Court of Common Pleas. You may or may not be happy with it. So the litigant can appeal it. And in Pennsylvania, typically we have two intermediate appellate courts. One is our Superior Court, which hears civil and criminal appeals from the Court of Common Pleas. The other is our Commonwealth Court, which is actually, and we'll discuss this next, it's unique to Pennsylvania. It is a very special court. And those are known as our two intermediate courts. So this is our Commonwealth Court. It was created in 1968. It is a court which is focused, I'll say, or where litigation involving SEPTA, involving tax issues, anything against a county or the state, governmental entities, those cases can be filed in Commonwealth Court. The president judge is Judge Renee Cohn-Jubileer, and it's actually right now handling an issue about a constitutional amendment, and so it hears a lot of I'll say matters that are and analyze legislative impact on the government, and this court is has 9 judges currently, because one of the judges who was sitting on this court 2 years ago was elected to the Supreme Court. And again, and I think we forgot to mention this, but the judges in the Court of Common Pleas, the judges in municipal court, judges in Commonwealth, Superior, and Supreme Court are all elected to 10-year terms initially. And then after the initial 10-year term, we have in Pennsylvania what's known as a retention election, which we'll discuss a little later. Your Honor, do you want to add anything about the Commonwealth Court?
Yeah, they also do a lot of election cases.
Right.
They're kind of central control for election cases. And what's important is that many of the cases, once they're appealed to these intermediate courts, they don't go beyond the Supreme Court. Supreme Court hears a very limited number of cases under very limited circumstances. So these courts generally are the last word in not all appellate matters, but in a lot of appellate matters. So they're very important courts, extremely important.
So our other intermediate appellate court, I'll say, is the Superior Court. It is actually known as one of the busiest courts in the country because you have an automatic right of appeal. So anytime there is displeasure with a Court of Common Pleas decision, a party can appeal it. And our Superior Court, is made up of 15 judges. there is currently one vacancy. This was founded in 1895, so it's an older court. And here, I've presented 2 examples of recent decisions by the Superior Court that I do not know off the top of my head if they have been appealed, to the Supreme Court. But one, found a nursing home arbitration agreement unconscionable, and the other had to do with the partial obstruction of a vehicle registration plate. Your Honor, any thoughts on the Superior Court?
No, you covered it well. They do the bulk of the appellate work in the Commonwealth, and they pretty much make most of the law.
And the Superior Court sits across the state. So, they'll hear in Philadelphia, they'll hear in Pittsburgh, they'll hear in sometimes in Harrisburg, so that, to make sure that the litigants, right, don't have to just all go to one courthouse, I'll say, for their arguments. And our highest court in Pennsylvania is known as our Pennsylvania Supreme Court. It is the ultimate authority, right, on matters brought before the lower courts dealing with Pennsylvania law, Pennsylvania statute interpretation. The important difference with our Supreme Court is that the review is discretionary. That means that the court itself can decide whether it wants to hear a case or not. And, it really does limit the number of cases that it hears. They want them to be very important, and really impactful on the law, on your life, and something that will, maybe this is a unique situation to Pennsylvania, the first interpretation under Pennsylvania law. There are mandatory reviews in limited number of categories. And then in Pennsylvania, we have a unique I'll say authority of our Supreme Court, which is known as the King's bench power, which means that a case could actually be filed directly with the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court. It's a petition for the King's bench power, for asking the court to accept the case, because this is something that's precedential, one of its kind, very impactful. There was a recent petition, as I mentioned, involving constitutional amendments, and the court actually denied the petition and sent it back down to the Commonwealth Court. But it is an important ultimate decider in our Pennsylvania Commonwealth. Your Honor, do you have anything to add?
Yes, they also exercise tremendous authority over the legal profession. They really are the last word in discipline for lawyers and judges when appropriate. They are very involved in education and budgeting. They have many, as this chart shows, many committees and boards. They exercise a lot of authority. And they are very much involved in every aspect of the legal profession and community in Pennsylvania.
And so it's also important to understand that while it does have a lot of supervisory activities, its budget, again, is dependent on our legislature providing it funding to run. So while we think, the courts can run on their own, because we have filing fees, the court is very dependent on the legislature to provide continuing funding so that the courts can run. This is our current Supreme Court. Unfortunately, our former Chief Justice Baer passed away last year, and he left a vacancy. The woman in the center on the seated, I'll say, is Chief Justice Deborah Todd, and her installation as Chief Justice is this coming Friday, actually. We just celebrated the 300th anniversary of our Supreme Court, and it was they held a program at Constitution Center, and it was really remarkable and special. Any other comments, Your Honor, on the Supreme Court?
No.
Okay, so the other thing that I always like to point out is that Pennsylvania, I think, is remarkable in the number of women on the bench in Pennsylvania. The court itself has pulled together this chart, but we really, if you look at the pictures from our Supreme, Superior, Commonwealth courts, we do have a remarkable number of women or female judges, and we've had a remarkable number of female judges serving as presidents, judges in the Court of Common Pleas. So just a quick, difference. We've been talking about the state court system, but that's, one system that operates concerning our state laws, right? There is a federal court system. We all hear about our U.S. Supreme Court, and that interprets our federal laws. There can be I will say the federal courts can interpret state laws if there are if there's an issue that's greater than $75,000 and the plaintiff and defendant are from different states. There are also certain there's now certain complex actions that automatically get into federal court simply because of that they could be greater than a certain dollar amount. But but in Pennsylvania, we have in downtown Philadelphia our United States District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. We have it's down at 6th and Market Street. We have our Third Circuit Court of Appeals and our Bankruptcy Court. There is only one place for the U.S. Supreme Court to sit, and that's in Washington, D.C. And I actually forgot to mention that our Pennsylvania Supreme Court does sit in various places across the state. And then this is just a little, discussion. In Pennsylvania, we have 3 different districts in federal court. We have the Eastern District, which is Philadelphia and the Collier counties, the Middle District, and then the Western District, which is Allegheny County and its area. And then the district court is the entry level court in federal court. And then if there's an appeal, it goes to the Third Circuit, which is greater than Pennsylvania. It's New Jersey. It's Puerto Rico. It's Delaware, so that cases are it's a Virgin Islands, so that it's a wider geographic area. But I will also say that the federal courts are not as busy as our state courts.
I was going to say that. It sounds like sour grapes, but the difference in the caseload in the federal court and state court is quite stark. Not that they're sitting around doing nothing. I would never say that. They have many cases and many judges, and they deal with many complex matters. It's just that the volume of cases, it's really not comparable to
right.
what is done in the state courts.
So, okay. So, and I mentioned that the federal courthouse is at 6th and Market. So what's also very important is federal court judges are not elected. They are appointed and they are for life. Pennsylvania, we elect our judges, and it is really, it's important. I can't emphasize enough that our electorate, right, people who go out to vote, need to inform themselves about our judges and about the courts for which they're running, because since it's an odd number year, not as many people come out to the polls, and sometimes we can have 20% of our voting population elect our judges, which doesn't seem what we should want, right? So we briefly touched upon, each of these levels of courts have 10-year terms. And then after the 10-year term, they're elected for a retention vote. Although municipal court is a 6-year term, Your Honor, I think that slide is wrong, isn't it? Yes. Okay.
And just one further comment. A retention vote means simply that your name is on the ballot and you don't have an opponent. So it's not a contested election, but there is a question after your name that said, should you be retained as a judge, yes or no? And as a retention judge, having already served a 10-year term, you still have to go through a review process by the Bar Association where they review your record, they review your demeanor, they review your work ethic, so that there are people who have served 10 years and are found to be not qualified to be retained. So it's a very intensive review, and you're also subject to a poll that's sent around to the lawyers who've practiced in front of you to rate you. And the comments are always very interesting. I never took them personally. Sometimes they sounded like they were talking about two different people or maybe three different people, but lawyers can be very candid in their analysis of you and their opinion of you. And it's good to know, you know, I mean, sometimes a judge, you think everybody loves you because they laugh at your jokes all the time. Well, it's not true. It's a very, I would say it's a very humbling experience to go through this process.
And we'll talk a little bit more about this process, because the Philadelphia Bar Association reviews not only judges for retention, but also reviews candidates who are running, you know, for the Court of Common Pleas. And the other thing that's, as the judge said, you know, retention election is a yes or no. So it's not partisan, right? We don't know, and it's okay that we don't know which party the judge originally ran under, because the judges now, in my mind, you know, the judge's duty is to follow the law, right? Interpret the law, not duty to the party. And so we have partisan elections for our candidates, but we shouldn't be voting for them based on whether they're a D or an R, but we should be voting for them based on whether they are qualified, and we believe they're qualified. So, you know, who can become a judge or a justice, right? How do you elect? You know, who can file for the candidacy to run? So they absolutely have to be members of the bar of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. There is a caveat. If they're a magisterial district judge, so that's an entry-level judge in every county outside of Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia, they don't have to be a member of the bar, but then they would have to take a course and pass an exam. The candidate must be a resident in the district for a year prior to the election, and then there is a limit, I will say, an age limit of 75, after which a judge may go senior. And we've discussed the other topics here.
There's one little quirk in running for judge for the trial court in Pennsylvania, that you are able to run in both parties.
Right.
You can run as a Democrat and as a Republican, which I did. It is an effort to make the election nonpartisan. I don't know that it actually does, but I did run in both parties. I was very fortunate that I won in a Republican primary and a Democratic primary. And when that happens in the general election, you're basically running against yourself, so it becomes impossible to lose. So it's kind of a little bit of comfort, but that is a quirk, and it's only in the trial court where you can run for both parties.
Right.
And it does give you a little aura of nonpartisanship.
And I think that's important. You know, the interesting thing now, you'll go into to vote, and there can be, you know, a number of candidates, right? For, you know, six openings, there could be 20 candidates or not, and it's, you know, it's hard to decide who to pick from, but we'll discuss that in a second. Here are the requirements for the magisterial district judges. As I mentioned, you know, they have to be 21 years of age, a resident of the Commonwealth. They could be an attorney admitted to the bar, or they need to have passed this exam offered by the Minor Judiciary Education Board. We briefly touched upon federal judges again. They are appointed for life. There's a nominating committee who makes suggestions to the senator, who then makes the suggestions to the president. There is an extensive investigation and a confirmation hearing, and there is no age limit. And this is known as a merit selection. There's a different process for U.S. magistrate judges and U.S. bankruptcy judges. That is not an appointment process by the president, but and they're for limited terms that can be renewed. But and we always say, can you think about the name of a judge for whom you voted? But okay, so here's this. This is very important, and the judge touched upon this a lot. And how do you evaluate judicial candidates, right? It's we should look at their legal experience, their reputation for integrity and fairness, their community involvement, their ongoing educational professional activities, compassion, and their commitment to equal justice, but commitment to improving justice. And so, but how do you get to know about that? I mean, candidates attend forums. I can tell you that PMC will be having an appellate court candidates forum in May and October, but it's important to that I know that the Inquirer will interview candidates, but the bar associations are a remarkable and important source of information to help you evaluate judicial candidates. And this is and I'm going to give you a little bit of an explanation about what the bar associations do. Your Honor talked about the retention poll, the retention. There's actually an interview, I think, Your Honor, there's a questionnaire for retention judges. It's very lengthy. But when you're first filing, it's the first time you've decided to run. The candidates decided to run. They have a questionnaire they fill out. There is a team that's pulled together by the Bar Association. It's not all lawyers. It's usually 4 lawyers and 1 non-lawyer. This team has to reach out to over 20 references that are not recommended by the candidate to get references. The team interviews the candidate, asks a lot of questions about the candidate's practices, involvement in the community, compassion, involvement in DE&I, and then that team makes a recommendation that candidate should be recommended to the Bar Association's Judicial Commission. Then the Judicial Commission interviews the committee to find out about the process that they undertook, then interviews the candidate, and the Judicial Commission comes up with a recommendation of recommended, not recommended, or highly recommended, and it is published on the Philadelphia Bar Association's website. With respect to appellate court candidates, the Philadelphia Bar Association will provide evaluations for appellate court candidates that have offices in Philadelphia. However, the Pennsylvania Bar Association does a very similar extensive process of appellate court candidates, and you can find it on their website. The Montgomery County Bar Association does an investigation. The Allegheny County Bar Association does an investigation. So it is really important for, no matter where you are, to reach out to the bar associations to see what they have suggested. You can also go on to the Pennsylvania Disciplinary Board's website to make sure that the candidate hasn't had any I'll say run-ins with the disciplinary board. Do a Google search, right? But it's really important, as I say, for you to do your own investigation about the candidates and not just decide you like the sound of the person's last name, where the person falls on the ballot. The placement on the ballot in Pennsylvania is simply by the draw of a hat, right, Your Honor?
I was very lucky. Someone drew my name. I got the second spot. There were
great.
35 candidates that year.
Wow. 30 for how many seats?
I think there were 17 seats.
Wow, 7. That's a lot of candidates, a lot of openings on the court well.
There were 16 or 17.
Yes. Your Honor, do you have anything else to say about this?
Yeah. couple things. First of all, it's now become kind of in vogue for the candidates to have websites.
Right.
That was kind of a new development, and I'm sure that they're not going to highlight any negative aspects, but it gives you a sense of who they are and what they've done, and it's probably shouldn't be the last word, but it's something more to gain some knowledge about. Also, if you know lawyers, if you know someone who is a lawyer, and ask them, do they know this person? What is their view of them running for judge? Sometimes, there are candidates that people don't know. There are candidates that I don't know. So this is not a perfect system by any means. One thing that's happened over the years, which I find to be very unfortunate, is that particularly for the trial courts, the principal Philadelphia newspapers, I believe, have stopped making endorsements. And that was really, when I was running, was a key element where I sat down with the editorial board of the Daily News and the Inquirer. And it was probably one of the most intelligent conversations that I had during the election. I mean, they really asked probing, good questions. They only interviewed those candidates that were recommended by the bar. If you were not recommended, they would not waste time with you. And that's really kind of sad that they don't do that anymore, because, for people who do read, whether it's on the internet or, actual newspapers, what their recommendations were very helpful.
It's I didn't realize that, and maybe I'll reach out to the Inquirer and the Tribune and see what we can do about that.
Well, I think it's a crucial element
Yeah.
for folks to have that as a resource.
Yeah, they do make recommendations for, city council and for the mayor's race. So why not? It's just as important.
Well, their answer to me always was, well, there's too many candidates. We don't have the time to do it. And, that just doesn't make it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, there's something else I was going to say about the elections. Oh, I know what it is. You can't elect a judge if you're not registered to vote. So the election is in May. You have plenty of time, because the deadline to register to vote, I think, is May 1 or 2. I think the website is pavoter.org. So, make sure that you register to vote, because again, every voice matters. And so, this is our last part of this presentation. It has to do with your roles in the court system, because you are a crucial part of our court system. First, you help to elect the judge, but second, you help to actually make determinations. And, juries are a crucial part of our democracy and what we were founded on. And Your Honor, do you want to talk about juries?
I cannot. I feel so strongly about the importance of juries, how wonderful they are, how dedicated they are. I always tell them, we need you more than you need us. They are the fundamental cog in the wheel of justice. They are so important. And just, talking to people say, well, can you get me out of jury service? No. I want to get you into jury service. It just is so crucial and so important, and it is the essence of common sense. And there are so many countries where regular folks are just not trusted to make these important decisions. Whether it's in France or in Italy or in other countries, jurors play a very minor role. Whereas in our country, they are the key to the system.
And I also will say
enough.
And you learn so much sitting as a juror. So, I'm an attorney. I was actually called to jury duty in Montgomery County, because I live in Montgomery County. And I sat there and I was there's what's called voir dire. So in Montgomery County, that means the judge asks questions to try to help limit how many people actually will serve on the jury, because that's sort of I don't want to say cattle call, but there are a lot of people who come in on a Monday morning because they've received subpoenas to be a juror. Do not ignore that subpoena. It's really important. And I thought, okay, I'm an attorney. This happened to be a personal injury case. Why would they pick me? My dad is a personal injury lawyer, but I was picked. And it was fascinating to sit in the jury room and hear and participate in the deliberation about the facts that were presented, and what we thought should or should not be the outcome. And judges don't get to. Do you get to sit as a juror? I don't think you can.
Well, we could, but when you walk into the courtroom, the judge, the lawyers. I don't think it's appropriate, because
Right.
I think that they would find out what I did for a living, and they would defer to me.
Right. So it's funny you say that.
As if I would know more than they would know.
But when I sat in the jury, I would not be the lead. What's that person called? The
person.
I wouldn't do that, because I felt that I had an advantage in that I had my own interpretation of the law, but I knew the law, and I wanted it to come from the entire jury. I didn't want it to come from me. But it was really interesting to hear the discussion, and sometimes it went a little, I'll say, rogue, and I brought it back in. But it is true. I wanted to be careful. I didn't want to influence the decisions of my fellow jurors.
Bottom line is, jurors are crucial.
Right. Crucial. Really. We and sometimes if we don't have enough jurors, then we have to delay justice, right? So it's really important for you to honor the subpoena and show up. And then the length of the jury service depends on the type of trial. Sometimes it could just be a day. Sometimes it could be a complex case and last, Your Honor, a few weeks,
Could be.
But it's important. And so that I will say there are limited reasons that you can't serve or wouldn't want to serve as a juror for a lengthy trial. I mean, and I'm sure Your Honor has permitted those jurors to not sit as jurors.
The only people you want to sit as jurors are people who are able to do it and are free and clear and willing to do it. You don't want anybody there to be coerced or unhappy being there, because they're not doing their job. Their responsibility is too much for somebody else's life. I mean, sometimes literally someone else's life.
Right. And it's a very serious obligation, and you shouldn't be influenced by what you see on TV or what you think, how you think a jury operates from TV shows, or it is really different once you are there and sitting as a juror. And then just get out and vote, and because your vote's important. And here's the QR code to help us put your phone up there, fill out the QR code, answer the survey questions, because it helps support our funding. I think that there are some questions in the chat. Somebody mentioned that the Fittler Club is hosting a series where you can interview the Democratic mayoral candidates. This is a big election year in Philadelphia for mayor and city council, but honestly, it's just as important to make sure you find out about the judicial candidates and get out and vote for them. Okay, we'll have this recording on our website. We will send around the slide deck. And Your Honor, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I truly appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And I want to thank very much the Philadelphia Free Library. You are a terrific partner, and we appreciate all your support of PMC. So everybody have a good night.
Good group.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.